Hello everyone and welcome, and today I'm going to give you my review of the Reef Factory base pump return pump. But before I do that, it's disclaimer time. This pump was given to me for free by Reef Factory and I get to keep it after I've made the review. Reef Factory don't get to see this video before you do, and they don't get any input into what I say. And in fact, I'm free to say whatever I want about it, both good and bad. And finally, I've only had this for a few weeks, so these are very much my first impressions. Right, with all that being said then, let's get stuck in. So what is the Reef Factory base pump? Well, it's a return pump for saltwater aquariums, so its sole job is to send water from your sump to your display tank. It's based on the Jekod DCP series of return pumps, which means it's DC powered for fine adjustment and quiet operation, but Reef Factory have fitted their own control box and of course linked it up to their app. It comes in 4 sizes, 5,000 litres per hour, 8,000, 10,000 and 13,000, which you can think of as small, medium, large and extra large. I have the large 10,000 litre per hour version, which on paper is probably a little bit too big for my 450 litre tank, but I always prefer to oversize return pumps because they almost always run much quieter at lower percentages, and I like to have a bit of headroom in case I decide to turn the power up a bit later down the line. So that's what it is then. Let's take a look at the build quality and design. If you've had a Jekod pump before, you'll know exactly what to expect. The build quality is totally fine, but you wouldn't describe it as premium, and it doesn't feel as solid as something like an Ecotech Vectra. In terms of the physical design, the pump is nothing special to look at, but I think it looks totally fine, and I like the fact that it's relatively compact for a 10,000 litre per hour return pump. And it's also decorated in Reef Factory colours, so it'll look good if you have any other Reef Factory bits in your sump, like the smart roller. Away from the pump, and I think the control box is a really nice design with a sharp LED display and a backlight on top of the box. It's nice and compact, particularly compared to the Jekod box, and it comes packaged with a wall mount that you can fix to your cabinet with a few screws, and the mount is a really nice design with a spring fitting so the box clips in and out of place nice and easy. More to the point though, the pump does have a few nice functional design touches. It comes with an inlet strainer and a variety of nozzle sizes for hard and flexible plumbing, which most other manufacturers will sell separately for an extra cost. And I really appreciate the shape of the strainer, which is short and compact, as opposed to the long thin design you get on some other pumps that take up much more space in your sump. As to performance, flow is hard to measure for the purposes of a review like this, but I have mine set at 55% intensity and visually the flow is very strong indeed. And I think most people would be perfectly happy with the 8,000 litre per hour version on a 4-foot tank like mine. And in terms of adjustability, it's worth noting they're adjustable from 30 to 100% in 1% increments using the app or 5% increments using the control box. And for reference, I'm currently running a 5,000 litre per hour Jekod on my 130 litre nano tank at its lowest setting of 30%, and another 5,000 litre per hour Jekod return on my 150 litre tank running at 50%. And the point I'm making is that the smallest Reef Factory base pump will go well with relatively small tanks, so there is a base pump for most size tanks. Now, because my main tank is relatively noisy, I can't tell you how quiet this particular base pump is, but I generally find Jekod return pumps to be more or less the quietest on the market, and the two 5,000 litre per hour pumps I mentioned earlier are set up in my quiet home office, and I don't notice any noise outside of the sump. And the simplest way I can put it is that the base pump will likely be one of the quietest pieces of equipment on almost all tanks. Unfortunately, there's no option for a battery backup, which is a slight shame, but the Ecotech Vectra is pretty much the only return pump on the market that does have an optional battery backup. And I mention it not because it's an important missing feature, but because I'd love to see another brand offer plug and play battery backup options. And in particular, I'd love to see Reef Factory add a plug and play battery backup option for their upcoming powerheads. I think I'd also like to see a smaller size option than the 5,000 litre per hour base pump for tanks smaller than 100 litres. For smaller tanks, I'm a huge fan of the Jekod 650 and 2,000 litre per hour return pumps, and I'd like to see one or both of those added to the Reef Factory lineup. But I'm guessing Reef Factory decided that most people with small tanks won't want to spend the extra money, and in any event, adding extra sizes to the lineup complicates things for new reefers, so I understand why Reef Factory just went for a small, medium, large and extra large option. And finally, in terms of reliability, obviously I can't tell you how long this will last given it's new to the market and I've only had it for a few weeks, but I happily run Jekod return pumps on all my tanks and I've always found them to be reliable. In fact, I've previously run a Jekod DCP pump for 5 years without any issues whatsoever, despite the fact that I didn't clean it once in that time. Moving on to the app and control box features, and it is more good news. The app gives you an indication of the flow rate for your chosen power setting, as well as an approximation of the power consumption. Although of course that flow rate will be calculated at the pump exit, so the true number will probably be about half that by the time the water has gone up your pipes and into your tank. There are a few adjustable settings in the app, and you can turn the control box display and backlight on or off, and usefully you can adjust how long the feed mode lasts from anywhere between 1 and 15 minutes. I have mine set to 9 minutes because my skimmer feed mode lasts 10 minutes, so that way the return pump kicks back in a minute before the skimmer does, which means the skimmer won't overflow when it turns back on. And while it's called feed mode, I exclusively use the pause button when I want to take photos of my corals top down, or if I need to see what I'm doing, for example if I'm placing a new coral or rescuing a zoa that my urchin has stolen. Although I would use it as a true feed mode if I was feeding my corals, for example with something like Red Sea Reef Energy AB+, and if I was going to do that I'd set the timer for 15 minutes to give my corals the maximum opportunity to soak up all the goodness. You can of course engage the feed mode in the app, or you can do so using the control box. The control box has a single multifunction button which cycles the intensity in 5% increments with a single press. It will keep going all the way up to 100%, then it cycles all the way back down to 30%, again in 5% steps. But if you press and hold the button, that's when it cycles through the power options. Firstly, it'll present an off mode, which you can engage by releasing and pressing the button again, or if you hold the button a little longer, it'll present a feed mode, which you engage in the same way. And at that point, it will start a countdown timer so you know how long is left. Although the countdown timer is only displayed in seconds rather than minutes and seconds, which does make it a little bit more difficult to see how long is left at a glance. So those are all of the features, but is it actually any good? Well, it's more or less silent, the controllability is excellent, the box looks nice and slick, and I love having a physical button for feed mode so you don't have to open an app. And the refactory control box fixes the main problem of the Jecod box. If you unplug the power cable with a Jecod pump, while it's plugged in, it gives off a spark. Now to be fair, that's never caused me a problem in 8 years of using Jecod return pumps, but I have always found it a bit disconcerting. And I'm pleased to report that you don't get a spark from the refactory box. Jecod take note. And in terms of the price, they range between £240 and £400 in the UK, with the 10,000 litre per hour version I have costing £370. Now whether that represents good value is a matter for you to decide, but I suspect the price may divide opinion. The equivalent Jecod pumps are roughly half the price, whereas the base pump is about 20% cheaper than the equivalent Ecotech Vectra return pumps. So let me know what you think in the comments. Is this just an overpriced Jecod, or are the extra features worth the extra cash? For what it's worth, I personally think they're more or less appropriately priced and that they're worthy of a place on your shortlist. And I'll be keeping this particular return pump on my tank long term. Now if I've missed anything or if you've got any questions, let me know in the comment section below. And if you enjoyed the video, give me a thumbs up and subscribe to Reef Talk Extra for the next one. And until then, happy reefing.